But I think when you kind of zoom out, this is probably the biggest point for Bitcoin in its history. Kind of the legitimacy and like decrease in career risk that's brought on by that stamp of legitimacy of an ETF. The potential unlocking of passive flows, and then not to mention kind of the mass marketing blitz from all these massive financial institutions that are going to try to get people to basically buy into this fee generation machine for them. I think all of those things shouldn't really be, underestimated. The halving in itself, does the halving actually have a material effect on the actual supply demand function of Bitcoin? I kind of lean in the camp of not really, but I think it's a great meme. And, and look, like after this halving, I think like the big talking point for Bitcoiners is, I know a lot of people aren't too fond of the stock to flow pricing model, but just the stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin will be greater than that of gold after this halving. So I think that's a great meme, while you have this backdrop of net liquidity conditions increasing throughout that time period.
On-chain Bitcoin analyst Will Clement believes that this current moment on the eve of the Bitcoin ETFs is the biggest moment in Bitcoin's history. An approved Bitcoin ETF is the biggest milestone for Bitcoin for a variety of reasons. First off, it's a stamp of approval for Bitcoin from the SEC, which is essentially a stamp of approval by the US government. Second off, it's going to unlock passive flows and a tsunami of capital from sophisticated and institutional investors who weren't able to invest in Bitcoin before. Third and finally, it's going to cause a marketing blitz for Bitcoin as institutions such as BlackRock, Fidelity, and Grayscale fight over supremacy of the top Bitcoin ETF. They are all going to launch marketing campaigns to attract investors to their ETF. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where Will Clement speaks on why Bitcoin fixes wealth inequality caused by monetary debasement and why not just Bitcoin but the entire crypto space is going to rise. Also guys, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto and Bitcoin world, make sure to subscribe to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It gives the latest expert predictions, any breaking news, and top on-chain analysis all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description to join over 40,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now. Now here's Will Clement on why Bitcoin will dominate in 2024.
What a lot of people, I think, misinterpreted about how Bitcoin behaves in terms of its role as kind of a macro asset is Bitcoin's not a CPI inflation hedge. Bitcoin is a monetary debasement hedge. And this is something that even myself, I made this mistake in kind of back half of 2020 into 2021 thinking. And, kind of with the benefit of hindsight, towards the back half of 2021, as CPI inflation ran up, I think a lot of people became confused once Bitcoin started to roll over kind of the end of November into December of 21. But, kind of seeing it through the lens of being a monetary debasement hedge, it makes total sense, right? Because kind of the asymmetry of where you should be expecting liquidity to go from there was towards the downside, given the Fed was probably going to tighten monetary policy to combat inflation. And so I think now you've kind of got the inverse of that. So you've got inflation coming down now. And so it's okay, well, what's kind of the asymmetric profile of liquidity from here? It's very much skewed to the upside from here. And I think, on the back end of that, so should kind of your expectations for Bitcoin. And yeah, I think, there's a couple catalysts over the next 6 to 12 months that are incredibly positive for Bitcoin. I don't really have an edge in kind of predicting, the short-term price, at least at the moment. And I'm not doing so. I basically have the highest conviction in kind of where Bitcoin trades maybe over the mid to long term. And I've got my portfolio constructed accordingly. We've got the ETF coming up on the horizon. I have no idea if it's, buy the rumor, sell the news, buy the rumor, buy the rumor, buy the rumor. Who the hell knows? I have no idea. You just gotta, look at the price action and kind of derivatives positioning going into that. I will say, we've seen a ton of CME open interest, which is most likely, like kind of TradFi, hedge funds, maybe high net worths that are putting on the ETF trade, and that OI probably has to kind of get unwound around and probably will around the ETF. So maybe we see some kind of chop, between the time of the approval and the listing itself. But, I think when you kind of zoom out, this is probably the biggest point for Bitcoin in its history. Kind of the legitimacy and, like decrease in career risk that's brought on by that stamp of legitimacy of an ETF, the potential unlocking of passive flows, and then not to mention kind of the mass marketing blitz from all these massive financial institutions that are going to try to get people to basically buy into this fee generation machine for them. I think all of those things shouldn't really be, underestimated. The halving in itself, does the halving actually have a material effect on the actual supply demand function of Bitcoin? I kind of lean in the camp of not really, but I think it's a great meme. And, and look, like after this halving, I think like the big talking point for Bitcoiners is, I know a lot of people aren't too fond of the stock to flow pricing model, but just the stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin will be greater than that of gold after this halving. So I think that's a great meme, while you have this backdrop of net liquidity conditions increasing throughout that time period. And then also, I think the other thing that not many people have talked about, and I think people have talked about the fact that it's an election year, but the likelihood of us seeing either Trump or Vivek or one of these more conservative candidates probably getting into office in the back half of last year, I think that would be a really especially Trump would be a very positive thing for the market as well, in terms of if he were to step in, he probably comes in and just tells Powell to cut rates. I think there's a ton of positive kind of catalysts on the horizon for Bitcoin, and I'm just sitting comfy in spot for the next kind of 12 to 18 months. The wealth inequality is a byproduct of 15 years of monetary debasement via QE and just the dollar depreciating over time, right? Let alone if they're backstopping things just over time, the people that hold assets are continually benefiting by the amount of monetary units in the system increasing. And so, creates wealth inequality. But the other thing is, if you see that translate to, over time, actual price inflation on things that people are buying in their everyday lives, you basically create this incentive for people to want to like hyper speculate on everything. If you go back and read the book, When Money Dies, I read it like 2 years ago. It's basically about kind of all the activity that took place around, Weimar Germany. And I'm not saying that the US is going to go into hyperinflation, but on the very extreme end of this, what you saw during that time period was asset prices mooned because, the denominator's increasing, but also just the amount of speculative activity in markets just went through the roof. And so, one thing I think a lot of people know that I started off very much kind of just Bitcoin only, strictly focused on that, didn't even look at anything else. The thing that kind of opened my mind to shifting into looking at other things is, on the same coin of you should expect Bitcoin's price to appreciate because monetary debasement is programmed because they have to print more money to service the debt the United States does. On that same note, not only should you see money flock to hard assets, and I believe that that'll be mostly Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will devour that entire pie, will become, the biggest monetary premium beneficiary of any asset. On that same note, if you believe that there's going to be a ton of monetary debasement, you should also, on that same note, believe that there's going to be a ton of speculation. And this is kind of the whole thesis of, the hyper financialization of everything, right? And I think crypto is kind of the cleanest recipient of all that activity. A lot of people say crypto is strictly speculative and it's inherently speculative. I think that's true. And I don't think that's necessarily a horrible thing. But I think the same kind of argument, and maybe a lot of the maxi crowd would push back and say, well, Bitcoin is kind of the surest thing. I don't want to participate in that type of stuff. That's fine. But I think, when you kind of lay it out on the same coin of believing that Bitcoin should appreciate in price because of monetary debasement, you should also acknowledge that there's probably going to be a massive influx in kind of speculative activity around that. And again, I think the largest beneficiary of that is crypto, in addition to kind of broader gambling, that might also be brought into kind of crypto native apps.
So there's Will Clement on why we're standing at a pivotal moment in Bitcoin's history. The potential approval of Bitcoin ETFs marks not just a significant milestone for Bitcoin, but a transformative step for the entire cryptocurrency landscape. Will's analysis underscores how this development signifies a major endorsement from regulatory bodies, a gateway for substantial institutional investment, and the beginning of an intense marketing rivalry amongst leading financial institutions. This combination of factors is poised to propel Bitcoin and indeed the entire crypto space into an unprecedented era of growth and mainstream acceptance. Remember, understanding these shifts and the underlying mechanics of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is essential for navigating this exciting financial frontier. If you found this discussion with Will Clement enlightening and seek to stay ahead in the dynamic world of crypto, consider subscribing to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It's packed with expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis distilled into a concise, informative format. Join over 40,000 others by clicking the first link in the description and become a more informed crypto investor today. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.